Welcome to everyone, and thanks to Mr. P for agreeing to do this. At the outset of this plan, it was, look, Cherry, we want you to do a lecture. And no, you don't want me to do a lecture. Why don't I talk to Mr. P? He's who this week's all about. So that's what we're going to do. As Phil mentioned, I came to, actually, he didn't mention this, I came to Illinois, as did Barbara, at the same time in 1977. And it was a rather momentous time. I did my master's and doctorate with Mr. P. He steered me into the education direction.
That's right.
And I got a job. There it is, folks. He taught me everything that I know about the tuba without question, including not to use the four-letter word, F-E-E-L. Anybody else been told, I don't care how it feels? Just sound good. But we got to know Mr. P very well. We've known Lisa and Chris since they were little bitty kids. They still think my given name is Chicken Fried. But, you know, such is life. Barbara has been to more tuba and euphonium lessons with Mr. P than anybody in this room. She probably should be doing this interview. But in any case, we're very grateful for everything that he's done for us over the years. Everybody should note that Mark Nelson and I did an article in 2011 in the ITEA Journal on Mr. P and his history. And it's a pretty good article.
Yeah, I'm flattered.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. It's only the truth. And you can, if you Google Dan Perantoni interview ITEA Journal, it'll come up. If you don't read anything else this week, go back and read that if you haven't read it already. If you haven't read it already, you need to read it. And there'll be a test on Friday. So check that out together with the material from this interview. So just to frame this a little bit, Mr. P, I relied on averages pretty much, and I figured out that over the past 50 years, not counting anything you've done in the summer, Summit Brass, Rafael Mendez, all of the other stuff, you've taught at least 900 students. That's the bare minimum. And, you know, if we go beyond that, the numbers are going to get astronomical. But, you know, the great thing that we all know here is that you cared about every one of us. And you gave us 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
making me feel like I'm living my life all over again.
Yeah, well, this is your life, Mr. P, in academia. So let's just get to this. And you'll pardon me to keep myself somewhat on track. I've written things down, and he's seen what I've written down. So, yeah, we're a little prepared for this, we hope. So you were our teacher, and when we look around the room, there are a lot of folks here who have gone on to be great teachers in their own right. But I would say that probably nobody here teaches exactly the way you did. And I think you'd probably agree that that's probably a good thing. Whoops. It just, it's going. It scared me. You always taught us that everybody's different. We treat each person as an individual. But recognizing that, what do you feel like are the qualities that make a person a good teacher?
Well, obviously caring.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to share.
Give him a mic.
He has a mic.
Is it working on?
Yeah. Put it close.
Speak into your pocket.
I don't talk too well. Is that okay? All right. You asked me about, you don't do the same things. Well, there are rules, by the way, and I always treat it by a matter of percentages, For example, my assignments, if you'll notice, have always been what I call the cash register, the register you're going to make your money. On the tuba, that's a low G to maybe a B flat or a C above the staff. And that has to be good. So I usually And it depends on the individual too. It's a matter of
Right.
percentages, okay? And then if you neglect the low register, you're never going to have one. And for example, at the moment, there's a Navy band audition coming up and field band. And of course, I know those excerpts very well, but you better have a low register. So my students have noticed this semester that I've been pushing really hard, giving them assignments in a low register, trying to get that air moving so it's extremely comfortable, trying to get the embouchure so it's, when you're in a low register, you use a great volume of air under less intensity. But you just have to do it. And rather than too many warm-ups, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of warm-ups because most people play them like they watch TV. They're not concentrating.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you do has to be musical. It's worthless otherwise. And you're always performing, even in the practice room. I've always tried to believe that. And I strived hard to even try to do that today. But, it's a matter of percentages. You have a person who comes in here, I'll give you like Aaron Tyndall, man. He was one heck of a euphonium player, right? You want to
Right.
switch to tuba. Rather than teaching him, he already had a dynamite high register, as you heard last night. What would you give him? Well, I remember Pat Sharon had a great one, and when I work with Pat, if he's going to teach in university, you've got to play other things than an E flat, and particularly today's market. So I gave him a big horn and a lot of assignments down and stuff, which he couldn't do, but still assigning things that he could do. Don't get me wrong, he could always do anything, but all of us need to improve it. So also too, with this audition, there's a lot of technique. And I've always been tried to. I was influenced by Donald Dubb, who articulation, he just do this, and I did it. I never had a lesson till I went to college with a tuba, and all he did was sat down and played with me. I was talking to Roger Bobo, who also studied with him, did the same thing with Roger, and played, and of course Roger played in the orchestra. So again, I think imitation has always been the best teacher. I try to inspire that, not only as, when you're listening to tuba players, but in particular, if you're going to play a romantic piece, there's nothing better than a Sinatra pushing that out. You play it from your heart, or Sarah Vaughan, or Ella Fitzgerald, or Pavarotti. I mean, you could go on and name all the great singers. Or Yo-Yo Ma. So if you're going to play a Bordone, I want you to play it like Yo-Yo Ma would. I mean, that's what we all try to do. And I think, so I sometimes have a plan, but it takes a while. One of the things as a teacher is I've learned that I have to have patience. You're not going to learn this. Sometimes I have a young student who sounds really good, and they stay at this level. Then all of a sudden, a light bulb goes up. Wham! And I'll tell you how they got it, by a lot of listening. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a good class of students, and here it's dynamite, as far as the way they treat me and the teachers that we have on any instruments. I mean, frankly, I encourage them to go listen to the violinists and the pianists here. They're great. You can play a transcription, how would that flutist play?
Yep.
I remember one of my favorite students, Tony Niffen. He was trying to play the Bach cello suites. I'll be honest with you, I never heard anybody play the Bach cello suites on tuba that it sounded like Starker. I said to tell him, go take a lesson with Starker, see what he thinks. Helped him greatly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what we had to do with the tuba, because when I entered the business, you could play asleep in a deep and you were considered good.
Yeah.
All right? All right? And you could play, I could play bad piano and still sound good. In those days. But it's changed so drastically over the years. And
It really
I'm very
has.
proud to have been somewhat of a part of it.
Well, one of the things, is this working? Yes, it is. Okay, good. One of the things that I was going to mention, you have this whole business of imitation. Everybody in this room has shared this experience. Well, except you weren't called chicken fried, but you're sitting there and you play, whatever, Vaughan Williams, Halsey Steve. No chicken fried. It's got to sound like this. And then he plays it. And then, if you are awake, you play it better. It may not be all the way there, but it's going to be better. The whole philosophy of the imitation thing, I think, really affected all of us, didn't it? Yeah, yeah. Hearing what this guy did for us. You know, I mentioned this to you last night or the night before. Back in Illinois, I never saw him leave the building without a tuba or come into the building without a tuba. So, how did you handle your practice life, Mr. P? It was because you were teaching all day.
Well, I played a lot of fundamentals with my students, and I always assign a lot of fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so actually, I'm keeping in shape, and I play those Snedekers and stuff, and all the things for the last 50, not Snedeker, but Kupras, for the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I keep him. One thing that I learned when I studied with Jacobs, he says, Dan, always practice what made you good in the first place. And I try to do that, and again, with me, it's a matter of percentages. Like if I have to do recitals, a lot of high register stuff in there, you don't neglect your low or my big horn. I'm probably no best at playing an F tuba. And I started F tuba when I was 28 years old. I never knew what it was. When I lived in Europe. And reason I did it, I was at Illinois, as you well know, and we had a great composition staff, correct?
Right.
And you had guys like Warren and Paul Zahn, Scott Bryant. Well, he was not considered as far out avant-garde as a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, right.
Morgan, Powell, and you had Ed London and Sal Moderano, who invented really the music with computer. And one of my jobs was to play all that stuff. And I remember I get a piece and you got a double high A or whatever. And my God, And I was studying with Arnold Jacobs. That's one of the reasons I was fortunate to take and just one of the decisions when I was hired at Illinois. I took that job because I know I was an accomplished player, but I was too physical, and I knew it. And I needed his instruction, and it was worth everything that I've ever done. I mean, he was fantastic for me. But he didn't follow the same thing. He knew what I was going through. He took a look at that music and he said, oh God, you gotta play that. I said, yes, I need a high A. And he said, well, let me give you a couple exercises and some stuff like that, but why don't you get an F tuba? I said, where do I get one? He said, I got one right here. There you go. So I had to do those kind of things, and I practiced a lot, to be honest with you.
Was that where you got your Alex?
No.
Was from Mr. G?
No, I think it was the first one was a Bill Bell minor Western.
Oh.
I can't remember the horn. It was terrible, to be honest with you. Out of tune like mad, but so was my Alexander C. tuba. Back then the intonation, even the Meriphones. The Meriphones were considered probably some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting about, I want to touch on the instruments. Another thing that I did, I always wanted, when I was playing tuba, how come these trumpet players have all these mouthpieces? And they got all these horns. And we have, now when we started TUBI with
Right.
Harvey and all that, it was one of the things of why can't we do something here, And over the years, with the formation, they lined Tucci and me up to, I was an educator and feed him some information, and we had to go to Europe. You know why? Because all the makers over here, they wouldn't build a tuba the way you wanted it. It cost too much money, and they could make 4 trumpets and sell the trumpets, and they didn't want to lift every instrument. So, you can almost understand that.
Yep.
And, then they tried to copy horns, and they pieced it together. Anyway, Fred Merrick at Custom Music Company at that time, he was in the business, man, as far as instruments, and he imported Alexanders and other ones, and he went over to Europe, and they came back, and he said, I need somebody to help me doing this. And, he's talking to Arnold Jacobs, and says, well, get Dan and get Bob Tucci. Bob's living over there, and of course I knew Bob from, he was in the field then. And so we started collaborating, just, and we went over, Fred meant he could dig out all these people like Rudy Mino. And so, we had information, what do you want to do? I said, well, gee, I'd love a 3/4 C, that'd be great, And we need a 4/4, we need a 5/4, and all that. We worked with Rudy, who had basic things, but basically, I'd feed him some information, but would really quite be good for us, and a good B flat and the like. And we were able to introduce those instruments here at Midwest. Got pretty successful. And I'm thinking, okay, that's good. We need some competition too, so let's see what we can do. Because once you get these instruments, it's hard to have them work. So he met Peter Hershberger, and we got to know Peter Hershberger. Actually, the senior was an engineer and became one of my dearest friends.
Just turned 80.
And you're talking about the young guy. I'm talking about his father.
You're talking about that 80-year-old as the young guy?
He was older than that.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, Peter Senior was amazing, and he was great ears and a good listener. And what we did is we sent some of the old wonderful instruments we had. I remember Bob had a 4/4 York that was quite good. Of course, it had some intonation problems too, And the result, we did a really good 4/4, which I'm still very proud of. We made some instruments available, and it took off pretty good, right? But then, Gerhard Minor was very successful and was somewhat of Fred's competition. And if you know Fred, he was quite a businessman, I love the guy, but he was shrewd, I'll tell you. Yeah, he owned the name Perantoni. We still to this day can't get it back. That's why Mr. P's on some of those horns.
Yeah.
But make a long story short, we went over to, he found these instruments, the pianists come in here, the old F tubas, and I particularly said, wow, this is great. This is great. And so we went over to Eastern Europe and worked with some of the people in Eastern Europe. They had still in Eastern Germany, there was dirt floors, and you stayed in a hotel, you wouldn't believe. But it was like going back to the 1918s and so on. But it was really interesting.
This is the old BNS.
Yeah, and these people were great. They were great, and they had a couple of master craftsmen. So we played around a little bit with that, and eventually, that got going. And then, shortly after, Gerhard, who I'm delighted is one of my best friends, bought out BNS. And after the wall came down and all that, they moved everything, or they changed everything and rebuilt the factory at Marktekirchen. Okay? Now, one of the first horns I have, and I loved it, I think Mickey Moore still has it, is my Alexander. It was great too, but the reason I had it, I was playing in Europe. I had a Russian conductor, and I played the 185 for like 15 years, and this Russian conductor come in. I couldn't play loud enough or dark enough. And I said, okay, if I'm going to continue doing this, I need a big horn. So I bought an Alexander. Okay, the worst out of tune, the best sounding horn I ever won. So I always had that sound in my mind. And that was one of the influences we used to do the PT6, which I'm extremely proud of today. And so anyway, the history of that. And then the mouthpieces too. I found out that I could really change sounds easier than someone buying a tuba and try to fit the person with a mouthpiece. Particularly some of them come in because on the F tuba, all the guys were using Helleberg mouthpieces, and frankly, over in Europe, they don't do that. It's a completely different sound, and that's a sound I had in my head. And it's also easier if you get a little shallower mouthpiece. But anyway, did a lot of experimentation, and it's been a hobby. As a result of what we did, a lot of mouthpieces. And today, look at, you got Yamaha. You have all these wonderful companies, so a student can get a great tuba today, which makes my job as a teacher easier. We did the same on the euphonium. That's one of the things we wanted when Harvey and I, what can we do, And Riker called up Harvey, let's do a TUBA, which I thought was a joke at first.
I think most people did.
Yeah. I remember in the Army, I think Jimmy will remember too. I said, whatever, what I mean? Go down to McSorley's and drink beer. That's nice, but that's not my idea of what we should do. And by the way, there was a difference, and I've done that too, and it was great with Bill Bell.
Oh, yeah.
So, make a long story short, that was a dream thing of the organization of TUBA. And I'd like to give you my view of how that started, all right?
Please, it's on the question list, so.
All right. Well, since you're having me talking and I'm
go right ahead. I'm here to open the door and walk in.
When I took the job in Illinois, You know, I should tell you that the way I got into college teaching, I played in San Antonio Symphony, my first job after I got out of Eastman, and got drafted. And to be honest with you, my orchestra at Eastman was a heck of a lot better than San Antonio Symphony at the time, and I was almost glad. I went to the Army Band. You know, my brother was a very successful musician in D.C. And when I told him I was drafted, he says, man, I'm going to call the Army Band and have you play an audition. And I drove 22 hours, and I played the best audition of my life. I was scared. I don't know how I did it. But they said, we'd like to have you in that, but you have to enlist.
Were you the only person there for that audition? Or
Yeah, they said a private audition. Remember, you were drafted back then.
Right.
Okay, it was a different story. And they said, you have to enlist. I said, yeah, well, where can I enlist? You know, I went home to my draft board, and the lady who ran the draft board was against anybody. They thought anybody went to college were loafers. And she had such power that she wouldn't let me do it. They're going to get credit. And I had to go into basic training, so I went to basic training. And I was one of the only ones that could type at the time. Orders come in, my orders were in advanced infantry, and I about died. I said, oh my God, this is gonna. And I called my father. Now, my father was a very well-established jazz trombone player of that era and knew a lot of people. And he went, and the whole town went to the congressman and all of that. All of a sudden, I get I'm typing my message, and they said, hey, you're going to go to Navy School of Music. I knew if I went to the Navy School of Music, the next day I'd report for the Army Band, which I did. And to me, that saved my life. And to this day, the bands are one of my favorite. You know, I'd have stayed in there, but there were different times.
Yep.
You know.
Who were the, was it there?
Yes. Who were the other people who were in the section with you?
My young little brother down there, Jimmy Self,
And
Chester Schmitz,
Chester Smith.
Mark Blanche, Leo Hurst,
Paul Scott.
Paul Scott. We love Paul Scott, man. Yeah. This was, you know, and one of the things about the Army Band, with what I've been doing previous to that, it made me realize and grow up, you know. And I needed that. I really did. And I love the band. Frankly, I played more piano in the band than I did tuba because they, you know, I don't. Well, Jim and I used to play gigs in Washington, D.C. I played piano, he played bass, and we had a guitar player. But we did a lot of things on the side. So if there was White House jobs and they had these pianists, sometimes I'd go over if it was a simple thing and do it. But I didn't have to march, so I really kind of liked it. So. Anyway.
So
You did the Army Band, and it was after that you went to the Concerto Band?
I didn't go to the Concerto Band. I went to the Kunstmann Orchestra.
Oh, okay, that's right. You went to the
Yeah, Don Blakeslee was in the orchestra then. And what happened was there wasn't any major jobs going open. There was one in Boston, and Chester got it. And in fact, I said, listen, I was very close with Chester, and at that time, Chester was quite a guy, man, and he, in a lot of sense, I don't want to go into that detail. But I figured he was such a good friend, if he get the job, I was afraid he's going to kill himself. And I figured, well, I'll take care of Chester, you know, and I figured, well, it's a French orchestra, I'm going to play French, and I went in there, played a couple notes, and nothing happened. I was more worried about him than I was about myself. He got the job. And I'm, you know, fantastic musician. Chester could play a garbage can, make it sound great. You know, trumpet too. But then he started, that turned my mind around. And it said, you know, I better take care of myself a little bit better on this kind of business. You know, I like my friends, but next time I'm going to go, it's going to be a different story. Anyway, nothing really open. And at that time, there was a lot of unrest with Vietnam and the like. And I got a little bit sick of it, you know. And I thought, well, I got a letter from Navi. It says, hey, Dan, there's an opening in Amsterdam. Why don't you send it, you know? And they asked me to send a tape. I did, and all of a sudden I got the job to send a tape. And so I said, boy, this is going to be fantastic. I loved Amsterdam, had been there before with an orchestra. And so I went there and had a great time. I learned a lot, too. So I played, actually, you know the name Edo Duan?
Yeah.
He was our oboe player and conductor at the time. And we were doing the Netherlands Wind Ensemble. That was the start of it. And it was a big new music center. And of course, I was pretty heavy into that with him too at the time. So I did a lot of gigs with him. And I met him about 15 years ago, and we had a pretty good time eating hamburgers. But yeah.
So then you came home.
I got married, and I figured too, my parents were getting up there and being so far away, that was 1968, no, 1966. And they wanted me home, and I loved the experience, and I figured, well, this is as far as I'm gonna go in Europe. And it was a different stage at that particular time. And so I came home, and I had studied with Harvey Phillips, who was my mentor and idol. I remember as a sophomore at Eastman, I heard him play with the New York Brass Quintet, and that changed my whole life. I said, that's what I got to do. And to this day, I prefer chamber playing to anything. Yeah. But anyway, Harvey called me and said, hey, Dan, there's an opening in Michigan. Bill Ravelli wants to talk to you. I said, great. And I had just won the North Carolina Symphony. That was the only job that was open. Mm-hmm. Of course, the guy who auditioned me was younger than me on the violin. I mean, back then, you played 32 weeks, you didn't make much money, and you toured a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I called Ravelli, and Ravelli says, what degree do you have? I said, I have a bachelor's. And he said to me, he says, call me when you get a master's. And I really didn't know, and I said, wise mouth, and I regretted it. And he says, what do you want, a tuba player or the degree? And he giggled. I think it's because I'm Italian. Ravelli was a sweetheart, man. I loved him dearly. But he could throw it at you, too. Anyway, he said to me, he says, what are you going to do? I said, well, I got the North Carolina job. And he says, how much money did you spend in your education? Are you going to do that? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, tell me what you're going to make. And I told him it was $100 a week, and for breakfast you got $1 or 75 cents or something. Back in those days, it was nothing, right? He says, I'm going to advise you, why don't you go get a master's degree and then call me? And I took his advice. I really did. I said, well, gee whiz, I got the GI Bill. My brother's in D.C., who was the main booker. I got all my friends. Jimmy Self is still in the band and all that. So I went to Catholic University. And it was pretty, I was a pretty established player. And the tuba player in the orchestra, I didn't particularly think that we would be a good match to study with, although I respected him. But Lloyd Geisler was there, and I asked, I want to study with Lloyd, and he says, fine. And so I also studied conducting with him, believe it or not. And got one of those easy degrees, as you guys know, at Catholic University. In 2 semesters, I had a master's degree. And I worked with Jim Self in a Capitol Club. We played, 5 nights a week or so? I made more damn money. We made more money then on the side. He was still in the service. But I could do that, go to college free, got a master's degree. And the next year, now Harvey always said to me, he says, Dan, you've got to teach. And in the back of my mind, I don't know what he saw in me, but it really did. He says, I'm going to tell you something. With the movement right now, with the brass quintet, they're going to hire tuba players. Because every school up to that time had, you study with the trombone player. Much in the sense is, now we got a euphonium teacher. Yes. That was Harvey's dream and my dream too, and I'm so proud to have my colleague back there. Anyway, to make a long story short, where was I going?
We're coming towards Illinois. Harvey.
Yeah, he says, this is what you should do. Now, there was nothing open. In fact, Philadelphia came open, but they wouldn't listen to me. And they went private union, only guys in the union that, and some of the guys, even Ron Bishop couldn't. He was pretty well established. They wouldn't listen to anybody, so that orchestra was a little political at the time. Mm-hmm. Not to say that the guy that they hired wasn't any good.
Right.
But there was really no jobs, and like I'm right about now. And we saw the future. It says, university now, that's a pretty doggone place, And so there's a job at Ball State, and there was a job at East Carolina. And I had auditioned for Illinois before, but Ray Natitis got it. I didn't have a degree back then. Mm-hmm. Then I went to, the other route. Mm-hmm. And so, make a long story short, I was offered two positions. I was offered Ball State and I was ready to sign a contract. I never heard from Illinois. And so I decided to call the trombone teacher, Bob Gray, and I called him and he says, "Didn't you hear you got the job?" Had I not called him, I would have signed a contract. Nothing against Ball State, but seriously, that's another league, you know. Isn't it amazing how things happen sometimes? I just had a feeling, and I loved Illinois. I got there, the first student I had was twice my age. I walked in there, his name was Warren Felch. You remember Warren?
No.
Okay, I bet
I'm
Phil
not
Frankie,
that old.
I bet Phil Frankie does though. Anyway, Warren, he said, I looked at him and I said, "Don't you think this should be the other way around?" I mean, you know. Actually, it was really good, you know, and we became good friends, and he did study, really did. He's a
Oh, you
couple
had
of,
Kent Campbell,
yeah.
some of those guys.
Some of those guys, anyway, at Illinois, that was a different story back then, and it was like, I felt like DeMadre joining the faculty here, you know, with all the guys who've been around for years. But they really took care of me. Haskell Sexton was a trumpet
Right.
teacher, and Jim Darling was the trumpet assistant, and we formed a quintet, and it was really good. My days at, and obviously too, there were student unrest, and that's when I met Dan Perino, and we formed a Dixieland band to play for students, and that became fantastic, and so I really had great friends. Morgan Powell's my best friend.
So, you know,
Yeah.
those first years at Illinois is probably the only time in your life that you ever needed to recruit students, because you didn't recruit me, I recruited myself. Everybody out here recruited themselves, right? You went, you sent in a recording, or you came to audition for him, and you're like, "Oh God, please let me get in." And, you know, and a lot of poor souls didn't. But what did you do those first few years to get
Well,
things going?
you know, they had a good summer youth program there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and one of the reasons they hired a brass quintet is to go out and play at the different schools around the state at that time. And that was an easy way to recruit, you know, you got a quintet, you don't have to have a band, which costs a lot of money to go out, you know, in this sense, and, you know, that's why they used to do it. So I visited a lot of high schools in the area in Chicago, and, you know, did a lot of little campaigning, but Illinois always was able to attract good students, and particularly because of the summer youth program, which we did. We also did they had a place out in the country where we had like a retreat. We brought in the New York Brass Quintet as our game thing, and then all of us would, you know, have the students come in, which we'd bring in, and, you know, you'd listen to these guys say, "Hey, listen, I'd like to have you at Illinois," and such. I think Mickey Moore was one of them. And, you know, I heard him play, and then my God, Dave Glidden, and I'm extremely so proud of these guys now when I look back at it. Anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, though, you know, what's been interesting to me the last couple of days is these younger people don't know about your first recording, Mr. P. I mean, all of us Illinois boys certainly do. But you made that recording with Howard Carr.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
And
Okay,
what about that?
Okay, I was a young instructor at that time. And obviously everybody wants to get tenure, and that system was different back then. And obviously, you know, hey, a recording would be better than a book. I saw Harvey's recordings, he did a ton of them. And the master, Howard Carr, who, you know, his reputation is, he went to Wisconsin, he's one of the best pianists. And he says, "I'd like to play the Hindemith with you." And I go, "My God, you would like, you know, it's great."
You automatically know he's a sick man and he wants to play the hit.
Yeah, or anybody can play the last page. I could play the first two movements, I could never play the last page. You know, and so in college I could fake my way, almost. But
Barbara can play it.
you better believe it, I was just going to say it.
And Phil Frankie can fake it like nobody I've ever seen.
We go la 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 like that, right? Anyway, I decided to do a recording, and of course, you know, we had the great composers like Paul Zahn, he wrote my piece. And I always loved the Halsey Stevens because, frankly, that was one of the only good pieces around other than, at the time, the Hindemith. There was not much else out there, you know, that hadn't been done, you know, and I didn't want to do anything Harvey did, obviously. I didn't consider that being in a league. But I recorded, I think, Jimmy, you were there with me, weren't you?
Meister, you're recording him
Yeah.
in that hall at IU in Indiana.
That's right, yeah. Anyway, I did that record, and it was quite good. Dave Peters, who was in education at that time, started a record company, and he says, "Why don't you let me produce it?" I said, "Well, gee, fine, you know." And back then, you couldn't splice.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you want to splice, it was a razor blade, and you were at the mercy of whatever. So, you know, but I did a recording, and it's quite good. The reason I never really got listened, I met a guy here who studied with him years later, and he said to me, he said, "I really like recording. However, in that cadenza, there's 30-second notes. You didn't play them." I said, "No." And I played it real well, but I since learned through a lot more study, I'd like to do it again, to be honest with you. You know, if I'm still playing it, but yeah.
Well,
But I like the recording. The recording's pretty good. A couple people like Mike Taylor have copies, and they asked me to release it, and maybe someday I will.
you need to release that recording.
Yes.
It's important. Screw the 30-second notes. It doesn't matter. You play great on the thing, and and all that. The Halsey Stevens. A lot of you know me. I did some research and discovered that in the 1970s and the 1980s, that was the most played tuba solo. Period. More than the Vaughan Williams or the Hinton or anything else. And it's interesting to me. And a lot of you here haven't heard Mr. P's recording of it, have you? And it's really good. You know, Jim Self has a nice recording of it too. And you should hear that also. But anyway, if you're looking for a round to it, I had a round to it somewhere that I will give to you so you can get that released.
I'm on sabbatical now, and
Perfect sabbatical project.
listen, that's one of the cool. It's fantastic. It's very surprising. I'm supposed to do a CD. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I
See,
told
you've
them.
already got one made.
I have about 3 or 4 actually that I've done over the years. It's live, and I might put it out. But look, with Spotify and all that's a waste of time.
Yeah.
You know, so I just probably, if it's any good, and look at it, I might stick it on YouTube. But I have to do something to satisfy the people who gave me the sabbatical.
So you did so many great things happen. I mean, I know we don't have a lot
Not
more
a ton,
time,
so
and I don't want to hog it for Illinois, but so many things happened at that time. You were the first elected president of TUBA. You, the Madison Phillips Tuba Jazz Consort started while you were there. You started playing with the St. Louis Brass Quintet at that point in time. So many great things happened. Is there any of that stuff that you'd like to talk a little bit about?
Well, you know, I can tell you about, Harvey did the 1974 ITEC, and one of the reasons we did that, we said, I'm going to have a celebration, and boy, did he ever invited every composer in the world and all the artists and paid them, and we're going to also start the official putting together TUBA, which Winston was working on before that, and Les Warner, we had a tuba trio. Les was at Ball State, and so that was the thing of it. And so, you know, I get to Harvey. Harvey got sick here in Indiana, and all of a sudden, man, we had to put him in the hospital. And I knew a little bit about what he was doing, so I stepped in, and all of a sudden, had to run the conference. And I was amazed. I mean, I had deals with people like Gunther Schuller and change programs, and people got sick, and it was something. But frankly speaking, I was very pleased that they listened. Of course, Carol was behind with me too. And we were able to do that. And then that was the first time we had to play with the Tuba Jazz Concert. And that came about because Harvey met Rich Madison. I forget where Don Little was.
At the University of Northern Iowa.
At Northern Iowa. Don Little was there, had a tuba ensemble. And Rich says, Harvey, we got to play together now. And they said, why don't we put a tuba jazz group together? Rich says, yeah, 3 euphoniums, 3 tubas. You get the tubas, I'll get the euphonium players. I'll get the rhythm section. Rhythm section, we played with Louis Belson. I mean, we played with a Roger Calloway. I could name, it was amazing. I didn't know what I was doing, you know?
Rufus Reed played with you.
Oh, Rufus did, yeah. By the way, he's a pretty good friend in the army, yeah. Anyway, the long things is you met some people, and here's a chart, right? And I looked at Buddy Baker, I got over there, I said, geez, Buddy, how do I play that? He said, sing it. I went, do. I said, yeah, sing, play the same way. And I'll be son of a gun, I learned so much. That was the days of that. Now, at that meeting, I was so busy trying to get through this conference, and I wasn't at the meeting, and I got elected president. You know? That's a true story, you know? And I always felt it should have been Winston, because Winston's the brains behind the whole thing. Always has been.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm very proud of that because, you know, what we wanted to do was to share ideas, because that was a part of it, and let the student be able to, you know, we put out a newsletter, and you'd hear from all these great players and such. And over the years it's developing, and today it's fantastic. What a news story. Actually, we were one of the first. We modeled after, I modeled it after Tom Sywey, who had the Percussive Arts Society.
Right.
And so basically that was our wish. I said, okay, we got to get representatives in Europe and such, and we contacted like Japan, had the organization with, you know, and anyway, made a lot of friends, and we were able to establish it as international a little bit later, although it's always been more American.
Yeah.
But, and then we did our years of
You
that.
had the first national
Yeah.
conference at Illinois in 76.
I got to tell you something. When Harvey did this one, he had the university here behind him. He lost 50 grand at that time. It was a lot of money.
Right.
I came here in 94 and I was asked to do Hickman wanted me to do and I did a summit brass, tuba, and everything else. My dean told me, he says, Dan, you're not going to lose a cent. So okay, so he sent it through here, and frankly speaking, it was a different story. Well, in Illinois at that time, we had to take the risk. So I'm doing this. If we lost, I'm in trouble. So I did it on a shoestring budget. Also had an idea, says, okay, why don't we bring in, let's do competitions. I want a solo competition, an orchestra competition, and such. So we started that. Fritz Konjic won the first one. He played the Crafts and Counter. Played the living snot out of it too, you know. And I remember Gene Picorni came. He was a young high school kid. And we had him over at the house to wash his clothes. So you'll probably remember that, you know. And so that was, and I brought in like Roger Bobo. Now Roger thought it was a joke too. And then when he hung out for a week with us, he flipped out. He said, boy, this is great. In fact, I remember him going out on stage and was nervous. I said, what, you're nervous? Yeah. I said, Roger, you don't even have to play a note. That's how much people respect you. You know, and, you know, I mean, of course, Roger and I we went to school together too. He's a little older than me, but don't tell him that. Anyway, that's going to something else here too, if you want.
Well, we're getting close to being out of time here. We've got to be done in about 3 minutes. I think we're done at 1:50.
Well, they might kick us out, they might not.
So, well, okay, we'll keep going. If somebody comes to,
Hey, it's all tuba players in here, isn't it? We'll go after it. But I'm a little worried if DeMondre's leaving.
I'm going to be the bouncer.
Excellent.
okay. Well, so then you went to ASU. Why'd you do that?
Well, you know what? Dave Hickman, who actually I was on a committee to hire him. And
I studied trumpet literature with him.
yeah, he's the real deal, man. When he came to audition, we went through all these college teachers, and to be honest with you, and I didn't hear anything that I thought was, you know, Tom Fredrickson, my dear friend, happened to be the director of the school at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I want, you know, we had some young guys. Well, anyway, Hickman come in and audition. I talked him into coming to IU, and we became great friends. And
You mean ASU?
excuse me, no, that's just
You
Illinois.
mean U of I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave was a little bit unhappy at Illinois with a couple of our colleagues, and he said he wanted to move. ASU was open. He says, I'm going to go audition. And I said, you know, hey, I hate to lose you, but I totally understand. So he went out there. There was also a tuba opening, and a lot of my students were in the finals for it, actually.
And the guy who he followed at Illinois was at ASU, by the way.
Yeah, and he went into real estate.
Yeah.
Listen, at ASU at that time, I should tell you, that school was just beginning, and there was really no students in Arizona. It was A completely other thing. But anyway, while Dave was there and going to sign a contract, George Umberson, who was one of the best directors I have ever had the pleasure of working with, said to him, who should we hire in tuba? He said, well, you got all these students here as dance students. Why don't you hire him? He said, but you're going to have trouble because he's a full professor. He said, how about if I change it, if I can get it changed? You know, if we get somebody, I guess of my stature at that time, whichever word it was, he says, why don't you give him a call? So I figured, I got a call from Umberson, and this is Arizona, wow. Weather's nice, and it happened to be in the coldest time, and I was living in Urbana. I said, oh boy, I can sell my snowblower, oh, it'd be great, you know. And he said, if I can change it to full professor, would you come in? And I figured, there's no way you're gonna do that, but maybe it'll make a position a little stronger for somebody else. I mean, that's what you know. So anyway, he called me, he says, well, I got it, come on in. And I went to audition, and they made me a good offer, and I came back to Illinois, and I was very disappointed, particularly because I was offered another job and turned it down, and oh, we love you, Dan, we loved you, and then they hire as violinist and 10 students for triple our salary, and I had 26 students. And they said, we can't do anything for you, you know, and it would have cost them cheaper than what they could have done for the search, right? And I figured, well, this is as far as I can go with Illinois, and I loved it. And so I said, I have no choice, I lost. So without looking back, I went to Arizona State. Now, the beautiful thing about Arizona State was, to recruit, I had 8 scholarships in my pocket, 4 for euphonium, 4 for tuba. So I hear somebody good. You couldn't get anybody in there, you know. One of the problems with a guy who didn't have a little bit of an outside connection, he'd die there at that time, you know. So anyway, I could get in. I got a Steve Rossi, I got a Tony Niffen. I mean, these are all young kids, and boy, you heard these talents, and I said, man, I want to. You know, and it was great because, you know, I don't want to see anybody go into debt. And we had the full ride. In fact, we were responsible at that time to change the doctorate degree. The only problem is none of us who have to write it could be on it because we didn't have a doctorate, you know. But coming here, it's a different story, you know. So.
It's John Mueller.
Oh my God. All right, so anyway, Arizona, and I loved it. The only problem with Arizona was I had to drive too damn far to go to work. They didn't have a really good parking system. When I got there, I almost missed my own recital because I couldn't find a parking place. And there were things like that that eventually became a drag. Now, at that time, I was teaching the summers in Banff. I did that for about 10 years until they ran out of money for brass players. So it was perfect. I live in Arizona. When it was hot, I'm in Canada. Now, the day or so afterwards, that ended, I'm in the heat of the summer in Arizona, which you can fry an egg on a sidewalk, which is dropping it, you know. And it got to me a little bit, and also I was sick of the drive. But I said, well, it's a great place to live. I had family, half my family moved out there. Then I get a call from Harvey again. Dan, I'm retiring. I want you to apply. And Harvey said something, I said, well, Harvey, damn right, I'll do that for you. By the way, I never expected to get this job. Come on, this is an orchestra school. I never expected this at all. Nor was I quite that interested at the time because, you know, hey, listen, following Harvey, that's big shoes to fill, right? Well, make a long story short is they brought in several candidates who I knew were excellent, and I figured they would hire them. And I pulled out because it was getting late. It was like in March. And then I got a call. I guess some of the students went to the dean and asked to bring me in. Because I think Tony Niffen and a couple of them, I don't, you know. But anyway, I came in, and my interview was to do a master class. Well, hell, I've been doing hundreds of those, you know, so that was a piece of cake. I never thought about it, nor did I really want the job at that time. Because, you know, I could retire in Arizona and such, but after I auditioned, I was on tour with the Summit Brass. I get back, we're on tour with the Summit Brass, I get a phone call. They offered me the job, and I'm with Joe Alessi and all those guys, and I remember, what the hell should I do? He said, you can't turn this down, you know. And the guy's going, I go back to Arizona. My boss, George Emerson, says, Dan, I don't want to lose you. He says, you're up for a distinguished professorship. And he says, if you stay here, he says, but, he says, I love you, you gotta go. And, you know, and then I said, okay. So I came here and, you know, been the best years of my life. Well, listen, I was so delighted. Believe me, I went out the first day and bought a snowblower. Now, the thing about IU that was different from even Illinois and Arizona State is the faculty here is amazing. You walk down here, you see some of the greatest people in respect. Mm-hmm. And because of Harvey, this position was really well respected. I've been treated so well here. And our colleagues are just simply the best people. I mean, it couldn't be a happier position, you know. He says, why should I retire, you know? And I keep asking myself that. I said, you know, hey, listen, what would I do? Because I love the job so damn much. You know? Oh, it's time for everything. And by the way, I'm not announcing retirement. That's not
Well, we've talked about this. You know, you don't retire until you're ready to retire.
The Godfather can't retire.
So, you know, he'll know. I mean, you know, he gave me some grief when he said, Chicken Fried, you're retiring. And I'm not retired yet. And I've got to say, it did feel a little weird. But, you know, circumstances are different for all of us. And, you know, Mr. P, Jim Self, Winston Morris, the three amigos, you know, they're special people. We all know that. And they are very happy doing what they're doing. And if you're happy, why quit? Keep on trying.
Yeah, well, listen, you know, I think one of the questions you asked me, how to become a successful teacher, I don't have a clue, babe. I mean, you know, what is the best you can possibly do. And I'm not satisfied with mediocrity. Never have been, never will be. And I've never reached a level that I want to be, nor will I ever reach it. But I'm hearing some guys, a couple of them last night, we're getting there. Mm-hmm. And what a feeling this last 50 years to see the growth. And what a feeling to have so much love from everybody. It's amazing. And, you know, this week here, I didn't know how I was going to react because I'm a horrible romantic, you know that. Yeah. So, anyway, I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to be a part of your lives. Yeah. And if everything else is, you know, everybody who helped me, like Harvey and Donald Knob, Arnold Jacobs, I knew Abe Torchinsky, all of those people here, there's an influence.
Part of the deal is that
but I'm going to tell you
we have to remember that we all have the same obligation that he's passed on to us through those people, and you better take it from this old part here. You better take it seriously. And I mean, there are plenty of us here who are older, but some of you are younger, and this is a legacy that we're responsible to pass on. That's what he's given us. So do it.
Love you, Mr. B.
You know, boy, how do you do it? I've been teaching for 50 years. It feels like I'm just starting again. It's amazing. But boy, the instrument, you know, when you love something, but I never considered myself a tuba player. I listened to a lot of tuba players, but I think it was the piano training, the early one. I'm not that good, you know. But at one level, I could be, you know, but when I found a tuba, I found a sound. and it was early. And I still, to this day, I think it's a God-given gift, and I'm very lucky because I guess I was a natural at it at first. You know. And then with all the study, I realized that you guys who come to study with me are too smart. Because of academia, you study theory, you call it one of you, you're so gifted in the research aspect that you do. But one of the things is you analyze too much when you're as a player.
Right.
And I find that most of you do because of the classes. And I have to really, hey, come on, You have to play the tuba as a conditioned response. And that conditioned response has to be, good habits. And obviously, that's a physical side of it. So we work a little bit. But you notice that I don't go into the breathing too much because I can teach it through music. I don't screw with embouchure too much because if I have your buzzer, so I can fix that real easy. Most of it is confidence. Hell, man, I'm nervous too, But if you have a choice, and I learned this. I went through a depression in my 30s, and it was in Illinois, to be honest with you. Then I realized one day, I said, I have a choice. I could be happy or sad, so I acted happy. And today, I'm one of the best actors in the world, because I can act. And by the way, I do that, You come in a lesson and say, but, all of a sudden you love it. You want to play? You're an actor. What is this? It's a romantic story. Love with everything you got. This is when I'm going to, all right, but you act. And, with all the ingredients, what I try to establish is most tuba players have bad time. Jim will tell you that. You want to learn to have a good time, play jazz with a drummer. And you got to have that heartbeat in back to that. So, hey, listen, we're on to that because good time, great sound. I don't care. If you got a bad sound, forget it. You're not going to get a job.
Right.
It's not like your rock and roll singers. It's a different story today. Got to have a good sound. Today, when you're auditioning, you're not auditioning for tuba players. You're auditioning for violinists. So I've always thought that way. You got to do that, and you got to pay your dues. If you can't do it 100 times. You'll get it. You get tired, leave it down. Anyway, that's a sort of a philosophy that I always have had and still do. We know too much. Make it simple.
We've heard that before, haven't we?
Oh, you got to I saw a thing on somebody's door over at the new building that said it was like it was one of these onion kind of things. It said, student has amazing revelation, does what teacher says, great success. The students that I sent to Mr. P, I told Tony Niffen, and I said, Tony, if Mr. P tells you to take your horn, climb up the neck, stand on your head, and play long tones, don't ask questions. Just go and do it. Oh, I know you never did anything like that, but I was making a point.
Well, John Cage did that to me.
John Cage did that?
Yeah, in other words, he was put your tuba on the ground and play the damn thing, and I was I said, I'm not going to do that. No.
But anyway, we have a lot of, we've always had a lot of faith in you, and it's well placed.
There's another thing too is, I found out, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but you got to give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that a lot from my mentors. Mm-hmm. And right for me, the last 20 years is payback time. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't met Judy, I'd quit a long time ago. And she's, you meet your soulmate, that means so much. So, no matter. There's more important things in life than the tuba. Never forget that. Friends and family are more important. And all of us in the tuba community, we're friends and family. I mean, this is my family here right now. And that's really important. Now, as far as jobs go, what I always try to do is find something a little outside the tuba that you can do well. Because you never know. When I came up, I wanted to be in the Chicago Symphony. By the time it opened, I was too old. Not that I'd have got it. But that was a dream. And when I was at Eastman, you were a failure if you didn't play in an orchestra. That's the thought. I play an orchestra. Around here, I get the same feeling from the guy. Oh, I got to play an orchestra, I'm a failure. Bull. That's not the case. You know, it's professional. I went into the teaching aspect and I found out, even Jake told me, gee, you got a sabbatical. Yeah, I said, I can't get one. But I can do, if I want to do a little jazz this week, I'll do a little jazz. If I want to do a little classical, I'll do a little classical. If I want to listen to Bill Evans and play piano, I can do that. I don't have to go work on Saturdays and Sunday nights. I can see my family. Okay, I played orchestra for several years and I loved it. I still do. Now, in order to get that job, when I was at it, there were 10 of us. It was me and Toby Hanks and a couple of guys. And, you know, I got a couple, he got one, you know, it's no problem. Today, I don't know how the hell these auditions are run anyway. You could be the best player in the world and still not get the damn job. Okay, so you got to do your homework a little bit, you know? For example, when you're going to do an audition for a band that's coming up, they send you the list. Train like the Olympics, and that's what I do for you, you know? You're not going to do this until it's perfect. Let's go out and record it. Let's do it 100 times. Let's do it. Rather than doing those half an hour, 45 minutes of warm-ups, why don't you warm up playing those damn excerpts? Okay? And I know what you guys are doing. You're reading all this stuff. There's a lot of guys who say, hey, just warm up on all that. That's fine. That's really good. But usually when you do warm-ups, you do them physically, not musically. You know? I know I find myself doing the same damn thing. You know? But I don't have the time. But anyway, so you learn the excerpts. So what they're going to ask you, you know damn well what they're going to ask you. You gave a list. Now, in orchestra, what are they going to ask you? All right, what's the first one they're going to ask you? Probably Meistersinger. Why? They'll ask you the first part because C major scale band, you've been playing tune. Time. What are you going to play on the first part? When does that come in? D-D-da. Molto tenuto. You got to do exactly. However, if your main goal isn't making music, it's worthless. And too many people, I find, because I do a lot of listening to you auditioning, and there are my own students who play like a dream on a solo, but they play like garbage when you're doing these auditions. You know why? Because you spend too much time analyzing. Now here I got 3 cents sharp and this and that. That's a whole bunch of crap, you know. You play in an orchestra, you play with your trombone players, you try to make them sound good, and you're a musician. I don't think orchestra playing is hard. The hard part about orchestra playing is you have too damn much time to think. You're going to have to play Petrushka and all that. Oh, God, here it comes. I hope I got it. Or here comes a high, I got to do, oh, boy, you know. I remember those days. Howard Hanson had a high C after 150 measures. Play opera sometimes, Dave, right? I played opera over in that. I'll fall asleep here about half an hour, wake up, and it's your turn, and all of a sudden you've got to figure out where the heck you are. You know, I mean, it's a completely different story. But anyway, pay your dues. You know, all of us, if you've been successful, is because we thought 5 years down the road. I don't think of this today. I think 5 years down the road. Now, give an opinion what scares me. Right now, the population is decreasing because, you know, the older age, my age or so, didn't have too many children. And education now in music, you're going to see a lot of schools that you're studying for your doctorate are hiring people, very low salaries and no damn tenure. Okay? So what else are you going to do if you can't make it? You're not a failure. You know? I know some of the best tuba players who are lawyers, doctors. Pat Sheridan, look at him.
Yeah.
You know, he has advanced to can do just about anything in business. I wish I had a business degree, man. I'd be worth a fortune. I mean, for the stuff we gave away. You know, I mean, but that's never been a goal of mine. To make a long story short is, remember in life, you know, you make some mistakes, but I've been working 50 years, and I'm happy going to work every damn day. I consider myself to be one of the luckiest people in the world to have that opportunity. Now, had I had to back in the days, I could have made a living as a cocktail pianist if I had to do it, but I had something to back up again. I also got a degree in education, which, by the way, I was looked down upon when I went to Eastman. You're an education major. Yeah? Where are they today? You know, I mean, So you can change everything. And I can't believe the change we made at the universities with an idea that, hey, let's create more jobs. That you can instrument repair. Also, too, salesmen for musical instruments. All those kind of things are saying you can supplement your income. Today, look at the brass band movement. I'm so excited about that because now these wonderful players who are teaching in the school systems can get together with their own band and start playing music again rather than, there's kind of things you want to do. We had ideas. You asked me about Summit Brass. Well, Dave Hickman and I back, I was playing San Antonio, the St. Louis Symphony because the guy was sick. And then Mel Jernigan, who runs the St. Louis Brass, was a bass trombone player. We became good friends. There was an opening because the symphony couldn't do tours. And Mel asked me about a trumpet player. I sent Hickman over there. Then he wanted tuba players. He says, can you come? I've been with him for 35 years. Okay, that's another story, so I could talk for hours on that one. Dave and I, and that we were at a concert with the Stockholm Brass Ensemble. I think Michael Lind, we heard a concert. Dave says, hell, why don't we do a Mary? Why don't we do that? I said, well, that's, hey man, that's a lot of stuff. He said, no. I'm from Colorado, I get it. He said, I got some very influential people over there, at Keystone. Let's put a group together and see what happens. He said, who would you like? He said, let's get the best in the world. I said, well, Sauer is a friend of mine. I know Ralph Sauer. Let's contact him. Gail Williams, I knew Gail very well because I went to school with her husband. And we had an idea, And that spun off. Then we had to get a board of directors. Now, there's more to this that you guys got to learn. You want to become a tax-free organization, like St. Louis Brass, we're tax-free. All right, and you do that by, obviously, it's a corporation. And we had to do that for Summit Brass, because then anyway, you get together, it costs like $10,000 to have a cup of coffee, because everybody's coming from all over the place. So anyway, we got it. Joe Alessio on trombone, I remember, young Joe, and who else? I'm just trying to think. Ray Mays. We got the best players because the guys, we had a record contract before we played one damn note. And this is Dave's dream. And by the way, he's like Harvey, man. He had ideas and he follows through with every damn thing he does. But look at what you can do if you have an idea. Look at Chuck Dallenbach, what he did with them. I remember Chuck, he was a student of mine in Eastman, and they had a brass quintet. They started freebies, playing at churches and stuff. Then he had an idea of doing children's shows, and he put that children's shows together and did it to the masses. Therefore, you could book in large halls rather than small things that we play with St. Louis Brass. The only problem with that, you're going to tour a hell of a lot, and I don't like being on the road that far, that long.
Yeah.
But look what he did. And today, so there's so many other things besides being in that orchestra, guys. And by the way, I love the orchestra. And I want you all to get to your dream. I got my dream job. This was my dream job, and I said, boy, if I'm 60 years old, I'd love to be doing that. Because, I met Phil Farkas, and I was so jealous of boy, but I'd like to be at that. You can do it. And so you never take no. And, you get me as a dreamer, but yes, that's all can be done. Now, the future, as far as get your doctorate degree, you want one of these teaching jobs, I could never get this job today if I had to compete with some of you. But that's the way life is anyway. You got to be a lot better than us, and you guys are. And one of the beautiful things is when you hear that as a teacher, it's amazing. That's the best reward you can get. So, go out there and there's no limits. One of the beautiful things about this country, there's no limits. You can do everything. But you got to believe in it, you got to have a support. And like I say, everything you play for, there's a reason. And as actors, hell, it's great. But take care of business. I talk too much. Okay.
I'll give you a run for your money.
All right.
So,
I mean, we got a bunch more questions, and we're well over our allotted time, but it's been great every minute. I had a bunch of questions here about Mr. P's, growing up years and all of that kind of stuff. We'll do those as spaghetti tonight. So we'll do a to be continued. Thank you, Mr. P,
You're welcome.
for doing this, but more so for the big picture.
I appreciate it.